Hi, this is Tina Powell, host of In the Suite, where I sit down with top women leaders and some of the biggest names in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Together, we'll discover some of their best secrets and top strategies to grow a great business, build a strong brand, and lead teams in the 21st century. I hope you'll enjoy hearing their amazing personal stories of triumph, trepidation, and transformation in hopes of becoming better leaders ourselves. The time for you to lead is now, and you're in the suite. Meet Cecile Munoz, founder and CEO of U.S. Executive Search and Consulting, a leading recruiting and consulting firm in the financial services industry started nearly 3 decades ago in the early 1990s. Advocates for talent cultivation, professional coaching, and leadership development, Cecile and her team are committed to optimizing today's human potential to be competitive in the future of work. Since the tender age of 11, when she built her first pop-up concession stand, Cecile's entrepreneurial spirit and curiosity has taken her on an incredible journey. Fast forward to today, and Cecile is one of a very small group of founders and executive search firms owned and run by a Hispanic woman working alongside Wall Street investment firms. Cecile has had to face many challenges in a white male-dominated industry, and in doing so has helped advisory firms redefine what leadership looks like. She's fully committed to empowering everyone through her business, especially women from minority groups and challenged backgrounds. She firmly believes that if women want to experience freedom and the variety of life, they better know their money. Furthermore, she serves on the boards of numerous civic and nonprofit organizations and is a designated media representative in the California Republican Party on issues affecting the Hispanic community. Outside work, Cecile hosts a podcast with Juan Fernandez called Ends with Z to inspire people on how to thrive in life as individuals and as a community. Cecile and Juan discuss a wide range of topics from A to Z and break down the intersection of balancing your career, finances, and life experience. In fact, one of the many gifts you'll discover about Cecile Munoz in this episode is that she is a motivated, strong, courageous, and glass half full person who has an insatiable hunger to learn and understand and dance. Following a severe accident at the age of 50, doctors revealed that Cecile might not even be able to walk again. She underwent numerous surgeries on her legs, hip, and thighs. However, Cecile is a fighter. Thanks to her self-will and her supportive family, she proved the doctors wrong, joined ballroom dance, and even competed recently in the open gold level and took 3rd place after a grueling 8-hour competition. She's now busy training for the regionals and the nationals. Not surprisingly, there are many emerging themes from this interview with Cecile Munoz and fascinating insights and anecdotes into her professional and personal life. There will be many lessons to learn from and contagious positive energy to take away. Most of all, the importance to dance like there's no one watching in the suite. Wow, Cecile Munoz, take a seat in the suite. It's so great to see you. Wow, all the way from LA. How are things going there?
Thank you, first of all, Tina, for inviting me. It is such a pleasure. It is such a pleasure to be in your suite. Thank you for the invite. It is sunny. It is warm. We've just heard we're moving to the orange, meaning that more things are going to open. We actually can have indoor dining. So it's beginning to feel, I don't want to use the word normal because I think we should remove that. It's too exhausting to hear normal because we want to grab onto something. So it's beginning to feel like we can breathe deeper, we can smile bigger, and we can start allowing ourselves to enjoy life more. And that's always a great thing. How about you? How are things with you?
Yeah, so I'm looking at blue skies today. And so I feel great today. I'm a little sore. I took a ride on my horse, a DJ,
Ah,
yesterday. It's so amazing now to get outside, even here. So,
mhm,
Pennsylvania, now we're in spring. It felt
mhm.
a little winterish yesterday, but I love just the cold, being on the horse, seeing like the whole sky. I'm really happy. The change of seasons, especially here, winter was okay, wasn't
Mhm.
brutal. Coronavirus was more brutal than any other winter that we've been through.
I'll tell you, it's like Dante's seventh ring of hell, right? When is this freeze? When is this emotional and physical and social freeze going to pass? We all wanted to break through from that horrible part of our history as human beings and as Americans. But I'm always the glass half full chick, right? I always think about what is this life? What is these things? What are these things teaching me? What is life teaching me? Because that's the job for me. Life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. So I stop and I think, well, what am I going to learn from this? How am I going to be a better human after this? It was challenging, but here we are.
Well, I'm really excited to dig into it. And certainly the pandemic forced a lot of change, particularly for women,
Mhm.
particularly as it relates for women in careers, executive women, which is a big reason why I wanted you here in the suite. I have been following your career for years, Cecile Munoz.
Thank
And
you.
I find it so fascinating too that here you are president and founder of US Executive Search and Consulting. You are a leading financial services recruiting and culture firm. You've been plastered on the pages, on the virtual pages of RA Biz as long as I've been reading it. And that's been for the last 11 years since I've been in the industry. But you started your consultancy 28 years ago. So, a couple of things here that jumped out of me was like, wow, how
Mhm.
did you have the foresight to even choose to be this industry? And number two, you've been here for 28 years. You look way younger than that, I want to say.
Thank you. Well, I never intended to come into this industry. I actually wanted to go into financial services, and that was not even my career of choice. I wanted to go into the diplomatic corps. I wanted to do something different, but I ended up in this business as an analyst right out of undergrad through advice of one of my counselors, one of my mentors in college. And it was fascinating. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the intellectual aspects of it, but I always felt less than in my place. And it could be a lot of reasons. All I can say, what I pulled from that was that number one, I always was fascinated by the human component. I love math. I love numbers. Numbers make sense to me. Number one. Number two, I was continuing a trajectory in my life that I chose to always be the woman in the room, the girl in the room, the minority in the room that not only had to find the keys, but had to crawl into the window in the closet and then get to the room because that's just not a place where I was supposed to be. And that has really been a process that I've followed my entire life, not really but by design, but just by belief of that's what I want to do. And I never believed that I couldn't do it. And that I credit my father and my family for. But I ended up in this career by not by design, looking to make a change, become closer to the West Coast. My father was ill at that time, and I wanted to be closer to the West Coast, and so I fell into this industry not knowing anything about it because I had the background of understanding certain aspects of the business. But what I've realized is that I loved it. It made sense to me. It was the Rubik's Cube that I was looking for of the business component with the human capital component, even before we called it human capital. So fast forward to today, only in financial services. I've serviced other industries, which is wonderful. I appreciate business as a concept, but I love financial services because I am committed to empowering everyone, but predominantly women and especially minority women or women who come from challenged backgrounds. We grew up very modestly. To some people, we were poor. We never knew it as kids because we were fortunate. We had a home, we had land to run around in. And I say to people, especially to women, you want to have freedom, you want to have the variety of choices in your life, you better know your money. You better know your roof over your head. You better know how to steer your career and have the ability to have the freedom of choice. And so I chose financial services for that reason. And I started with a firm and it was great. I learned a lot. I was very, very successful. They went through some challenges in the firm. And I thought, you know what, I can do this on my own. Why do I have to be part of this organization? It was, like I said, quite challenging. And so when I started my own,
air quotes, quite challenging.
Air quotes, yeah. Yeah, because for me, like, I drive really fast. Hopefully no CPs, California Highway Patrol people are listening. But to me, my family says a yellow light is a suggestion. A red light is look both ways. If nobody's coming, keep going. And so that really is what I believe. And so I had a lot of challenges when I started. I still do. I'm fortunate that I've been around a long time, but I never allowed those challenges to define my goal, but only use it as a stopgap to say, how do I rethink this? How do I work around this? It was very challenging. I got things from like, when are you going to be serious and open up a place in the East Coast? I got a lot of, oh, Munoz is your name? When they finally met me, because they thought I was not Hispanic, perhaps the way that I sound, because I was young back then. I was in my 20s. They just didn't, it was something that most people couldn't wrap their head around. And so I chose to be empowered by it versus feeling limiting and definitely upset. Nothing grows from that.
A thought came to mind instantly as you were kind of saying that, because I'm imagining you in your 20s, someone that's really smart. Oh, by the way, everybody, she's the youngest of 7. We're going to get into the family life too, right? But the other interesting things, not only is she really good with math, she has a photographic memory. Who are the first customers, clients to come on board that believed in you, and where did they come from?
Well, I was really fortunate. I have the pleasure over the years of working with, and still do, with big firms, more on a consultancy basis with some of them now, with firms like Fidelity. So I was very fortunate, Fidelity, Merrill Lynch, all the big ones, TD, Schwab, and LPL, and on, Cetera, all of them. And then also with a lot of the big RIAs and the boutique RIAs and the firms that were really tiny, like there were Fundminder, which then became Centurion, which then became sold to Genworth and then became AssetMark. And then I worked with Joe when it was United Capital until he sold to Goldman Sachs. So it is the building of these really strong relationships, which of course is the bedrock of financial services. So I was emulating the work that my clients did in the way that I engaged with them. So it was these big firms that back then we principally did. Dreyfus was a client. We did the work over the phone. And when we finally met, for some of my clients, it was almost oh, that's you. I won't tell you which client it was, but I remember I did so much work with them that they finally summoned me to the corporate office to meet the chairman. And this is a massive, massive fund company in Boston. And so I arrived very early. I was not even 30 yet. And I had my glasses on. I had my blue suit. We used to only wear skirts back then, remember? And we had to wear pantyhose. That torturous pantyhose. And I remember I got there early and I had my questions ready and I was so prepared. And I walked in and I knew the voice of the secretary because from calling and doing all this project work. And she looked up and before I said anything, she said, "Good, you're here. That's your desk over there." And she said a couple of other things. And then she said, "There's some recruiter. She's coming in from California. This is her name." She said, "Ask her if she wants some coffee. If I'm not here when she goes in, you give the chairman 5 minutes. You call. If he says this, then you let her there for another 5 minutes and then she leaves. If not, you come in and you say you have that and you exit her out." And I looked at her and I said, "Hi." And I said her name. "I'm Cecile Munoz. Got it on the 5 minutes. I'll keep everything down to 4. I'll happily sit over there." And she said, "Ask her if she wants something to drink." I don't know what people in California drink. I said, "And I would love a cup of coffee, black, no sugar." And side note, I hate black coffee. I used to drink it with a lot of different things in it. But to me, that was a silly young girl sign of, I'm going to show that I'm tough. I still drink black coffee now. But she looked and she became mortified. And this is where women, we have to be kind to each other. Mm-hmm. I said, and she said, "Oh my gosh." And I said, I put my hand on her arm and I said, "We have to be a team here. You're doing your job. I'm doing mine. I want to thank you for all the kindness you have afforded me. So good to meet you. I'll get out of here. You've got a lot to do." And I just sat down.
Oh my God.
She always took my call. She always said hello. She sent me a holiday card until she retired. I had a choice in that moment.
That is, so I didn't expect that it was going to end like that. I didn't even expect the story, which is really fascinating. Here I am thinking that if I'm her, I'm already halfway into the bathroom and I've got, all kinds of tissues and whatnot. And and when the next time that you see me, you'll just see all my mascara, my eyes will be puffy and you'll be like, is that the same person? What a way to handle that situation. What a lesson. What a takeaway.
We talk about not having a glass ceiling. We talk about unlimited possibilities that we human beings have. Yet we ourselves are constantly creating our own glass ceilings, our own cages, either in our own mind or in our own energy around with the way we engage with each other. And it's in all facets of our life. We become our own limitations to what's possible. And I know that sounds like I should be rubbing some crystals and laying on a yoga mat, but if you apply it to real life principles, it is really hard work to do because the reaction to anger and some of these other emotions, it's faster, it gives us the juice, it's more rewarding in the moment, but the lasting effects are not something that is rewarding to your life.
Right,
go home and punch the bag. Go home and punch the bag, get it out and go, and I got the account, and I got the account, and I got the account, right? So it's a choice.
So I think a lot of women are starting to look at their own situations and their own environments, and not only who you choose to surround yourself with and your own environment is going to help dictate your own wellness, how you respond to a situation. And I want to pick up on another thing that you said, and that was your choice of staying in the financial services industry and this idea of women knowing something about their money. My feeling was this always, Cecile, is that people collect lots of different things, right? You can collect musical instruments, you can collect Fabergé eggs, you can collect cars. And always, if you want something, by definition, you need to understand it. So I'm like, if we as women want to achieve financial independence, and that financial independence, that currency is money, how could we amass something that we don't even understand? By definition, it's just totally illogical.
Correct. And how can we be efficient and effective at it? How can we do well if it's not something that we choose to understand? Unfortunately, I think the source of that is much deeper, and it's something that we could take multiple hours to unpack. But I think it goes back to socialization and cultural norms and mores that still persist today, as much as we have become emancipated and we are free, and there's movements and everything that we can think about, books and so forth, about how we are equal and we should be equal. The fact of the matter is that we're still not. We have a lot of work to do. But it's the idea of who we are as women that we still have a lot of inconsistent discussions with ourselves in the workplace and in our personal lives. And so you still see represented in society and in commercials and in branding and in the world of consumerism that the things of value should be shiny trinkets. The things of value in a partner in life, irrespective of gender, is provider, because somehow that has to happen outside of you. And we still get that messaging for women. So what happens when you think the provider has to be outside of me? Then therefore I don't need all I need to know is that somebody has it and is going to give it to me. I immediately give away agency to my ability to create it. I don't ever want to give away agency to what is possible in my life. I want to choose to give of X, my love, my time, my intellect, my compassion, but I'm never going to give away agency to somebody else. Even this also exists, even when I go see my doctors. I am the proud owner of not one, but 2 autoimmune diseases. And so even though I go to specialists who, God bless them, I'm still here because of, even though they have the medical degrees, which I sought out and I respect, I believe that I must be my own advocate in my own health. I must be aware of the questions. I must be honest with myself. I must do the work. So I think that's why we still have, I think, to some degree, a belief system that somehow that will just happen, or somebody else will provide it, or that if we just follow our passion, then the money will appear. That will work about as much as if you just put the book under your pillow and you focus on learning that, it will happen through osmosis.
Mm.
We have to do the work.
The work actually is the fun part. It's in the work
Yes.
that is the part that changes us. Like it makes us, we start out being one version, and then the work gets, deposited onto you.
Yes.
The very things that you need to be someone else, or the next version of yourself, put in another operating system so that you can get to where it is that you're going. That's the gift of it. The work is the gift.
Correct. And people have said, Cecile, what makes you so strong? I top line, I say I'm strong and I'm courageous and I took these chances in life. I get that part of it is the way that I was born. If you were asked my family, they'd say you've had your hands on your hips saying why not since I was maybe 18 months old. But I think the other part of it is because I'm loved, because I know I'm centered. I know who I am. The other part of it is because I value the process of learning. I value the process of getting from point A to point B to point C. Sometimes you zigzag and you come. And when you get to this stage of our life, I look back and I think about those crucible moments in my life were the ones that really tested my character, but that made me so strong. The strength is in overcoming. The strength is not in thinking about it.
Mm. You're bringing up a narrative and introducing a narrative that I find very refreshing and very transparent. And I wanted to thank you for that because you've opened up your own life. It was actually quite fascinating for me to do research around you, Cecile, and finding all kinds of things about you. Yes, I knew the career version of you, but then I also found the ballroom dancing, which we're going to talk about, right? And now you have also you have a podcast with Juan Fernandez, the Emmy award-winning reporter and news anchor. And I did the math. I get credit for understanding where the name comes from. Ends with Z. Ends with Z. In May of 2020, your podcast is a weekly production. You and Juan are totally open and transparent about careers, finances, life, relationships. Your last episode, you were very open about your divorce. And I have to imagine that was one fork in the road. At least it was for me too. You and I happen to be exactly the same age. We're both divorced. Those were things that put my life in a totally new direction. It was very scary.
Yes.
It felt like you were flying without a net.
Yes, absolutely. And I say that, but that is, life is constantly going to throw those things at you, or those situations will happen in your life. I tend to believe that I'm okay with risks. I will leap if I believe in where I'm leaping to. If there's no net, I think I'll figure out how to knit it on the way down and throw it down just in time before I crash land. Might get a little bit bruised, but I will be okay. That's how deeply I trust when I make a decision in my life. It was scary. Obviously, it was very painful. I was with my ex-husband almost 20 years, both married and dating. So it was very painful. And I think that a lot of the lessons, there is no separating for me in the lessons and the trials and tribulations that you go through in a professional life from your personal life. Most of us spend more time in our professional world than in our personal world. And I don't have children, so there is a blessing in that I don't know how women go through that with children. I don't know how it is hard enough to make those decisions on your own for yourself. And when you do them in the context of children, what that is going to do to them. And society gives you so many mixed messages and so much judgment. And you can have every version of advice someone can conjure up if you open yourself to that. So how do you find that place where you find that truth about yourself? And it's the same in your professional career. Who do you listen to? Where is your true north? How do you find it? And how do you stay sane through it? And most of all, for me, is how do you stay in grace and in kindness? Principally to yourself, without judgment.
Yeah, without judgment and without ego too, right? Just
The ego is what gives you the strength to judge personally yourself first. The ego will tell you, I am so wonderful. Well, what happens in those moments when you're not wonderful?
Yeah.
How is your ego going to handle it? What happens in the moments when you say, how could I have not known that that was happening?
Yeah.
What happens to your ego then? Right. And so it was a very, very challenging, very emotional, very painful lesson whenever two human beings who think that they have life figured out and their paths to life figured out have to unravel all of that and handle all of that emotion and still keep moving forward. We share offices together, so it was challenging. And then going through a pandemic where you don't have, as I mentioned, the distractions and the tranquilizers to the pain from family and friends and activities. I love the arts. I love the opera. I do a lot of things, but nothing was happening. And you had to sit very quietly and think about your life. I had to make some very serious decisions about how I was going to choose to feel. But I had to feel everything. This doesn't mean that as human beings, we don't hear and we don't feel the emotion. We must feel the emotion. We must feel our feelings and understand where they're coming from and allow them to then propel us to what's next versus keeping us locked up or sending us down a path that is not productive.
Yeah, it's in those moments of the deepest dark days that I think that we make really, really good decisions because nothing there to distract us. You have the singularity of focus and you really are in touch with your feelings. And so too many times I think as society, we want the quick fix, right? Like, oh, it's we want a quick end to the hurt. And exactly. And the pandemic, there was so much hurt during the pandemic. So many people, I think we've gone inward now. And in a way, it was nice not to have the distractions of traveling to conferences and going here and going to events. And one of the things that we saw here, I mean, Cecile, we're only episode 40 and already 3 high profile women in the industry have left their jobs by their choice, right?
Yes.
And what I think that's happening now is that people are really looking inward. The pandemic forced you to go dark. It forced me to go dark. I mean, I moved my state. Being in that place of dark is not only good for your personal life, but also too for your professional life as well. As you were saying, to your point, that we're the same person. We're the same person. We show up.
Well, that's what I think is the gift of the pandemic. And I really use those terms, understanding, not disrespecting people who have had loss, because we had loss in our family as well. But the gift of the pandemic is that it has catapulted professional development or evolution of the business world in two ways. On the institutional side, on the infrastructure side, in 36 hours, I say, in a light switch, we had to be able to work remotely. So many firms, especially in financial services, were very reticent to allow people to work, even flex time, let alone work from home. We had no choice. We have to do it. Done. Go. And we realized that we can. Technology is there. Infrastructures that were not there were quickly put in place. And those firms who did not suffered the consequences. So now we know that as structurally it can happen. And this was the movement globally from a workforce perspective that was already happening. We were seeing it in other industries. So it's forced us in financial services to embrace this is something that is now here to stay. So that's number one. But the result on the personal basis from the professional is that we always used to talk about work-life balance. I'm trying to have work-life balance. Things that you and I, when we started in the professional world, were not even topics. It's where's my desk? Thank you very much. You didn't ask about benefits. You didn't ask about vacation. You were lucky if by day 2 you asked about the bathroom. And maybe you intuited, you followed somebody because it was just about the work. That's it. So now we're able to bring more of our whole selves. So what happened with the pandemic is that your life, your personal life and your professional life was reduced to the square footage of your home. There was no escaping either. And then you saw in reality how your firm valued you, how you were managed, the truth of the culture and the purpose for that firm. And then personally, you realize I'm not Superwoman, which, newsflash, none of us are,
Yeah.
right?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
Hashtag.
alert, right? Yeah, she's actually an actress. She's not really, Marvel. So it's in realizing, what do I want to do? How do I want to live? I've been on this wheel telling myself I was doing all these things, but I was just swimming at the top of the ocean, never really going deep, never having those deep experiences, never really deeply connecting, never deeply allowing myself to. And that to me is the gift of the pandemic. There's some other flip sides to that also, unfortunately. A lot of women, because there is not the infrastructure to support moms, especially single moms, a lot of women tapped out and said, I can't do this. I can't. And
Right.
so we're going to see, unfortunately, I think, a whole segment of a certain level of the management role in leadership roles that women were in or getting ready to go into, that perhaps may have taken a couple of step backs because of the weight of having to be both an executive or a leader and a mother who had to teach their kids via Zoom. And that's what we have to fix. We can send people to Mars. We can figure out how to balance childcare and putting women in an executive runway. These are things we're capable of doing. Do we want to? That's a different story. We are capable. Other countries have. Why not us?
And in February of 2021, we already started to see, by virtue of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, see the difference of the labor force as measured by gender. The female population was 3.1% smaller than the year earlier compared to men, 2.2. And again, a lot of that was due to women having to say, hey, wait, I can't do both. I can't have my kids here and then also to do everything that I'm supposed to do for work. And we did see a lot of women drop out of the labor force for those various reasons. What did you see in terms of the financial services industry?
Well, I'll tell you, when the pandemic first hit, I'll give you a couple of examples. We have a wonderful, wonderful RIA in Connecticut, New York area. We had been retained to bring on board a succession strategy to one of three partners. Extraordinary organization. We ideally wanted to bring a woman into this role, which I was thrilled to do. First of all, that was challenging because there's just not that many who had the particular skill set that this client needed. Luckily, we did. We were very successful at doing that. The challenge was we started this right before the pandemic. We had a certain cadre and a certain depth of pool of candidates. As the pandemic progressed in those early days, women started pulling themselves out more and more and more. Why? Cecile, I just can't handle it. I have too much on my plate. A man, even married with children, because we also interviewed men, obviously, we looked for the best candidate. They never thought that. They never thought, I can't because it's because of my kids. And it goes back to perhaps those ideological, societal, cultural things that we women still tell ourselves. And so we saw women dropping out of the process, electing to drop. This is a successor, equity owner, leader of a firm that they were proactively hiring. But and I respect the women's choices. I understand them. I empathize with them. I cannot imagine having to make those choices. Then fast forward to now. I predicted in a lot of the consulting work that we were doing during the height of the crisis, the first height, I will put it in the summer, I was doing a lot of consulting work. We were doing a lot of consulting work with CEOs and executive leaders that were saying, Cecile, I don't know if I'm being effective. Men and women, I don't know how to lead. I don't know are we going to do this? My God, what happens if we stay this longer? How am I going to know my team is being effective? And as we then pulled out of that and we started becoming very busy the fourth quarter, the questions and the requests that are coming from executive CEOs or the board is to bring leaders. They're asking for more diversity, which is great, but they're asking for leaders who are more empathetic, who are more compassionate, people who can inspire. I don't think anyone can motivate anyone. You have to motivate yourself, but you can inspire people. You can guide them. You can teach them. You can train them. You can develop them. You can mentor them. People who can inspire talent. because they've recognized the most effective leaders during COVID, where we lived in unprecedented periods of uncertainty, which we human beings can only handle so much uncertainty at all levels. And then being stuck at home, the most effective leaders were those who connected empathetically and in a real way with their teams. And we know, because the science shows us, the women leaders are far more engaging and empathetic. We're far more verbal. And we are connectors of human beings. And they were more successful. So we are seeing a desire for this type of skill set and character qualities. My unwavering determination is to find women, even if they're, wherever they may be, to say, you have to believe that you can handle all of it. And then on the institution side is to tell clients, what if this is the new normal? What if a portion of your day is working from home and modifying our work schedules? What if, as you're building a gym as a value proposition to your employees from a benefits perspective of health and wellness, what about building a daycare at the bottom of the building? How about that health and wellness for women and for their families? And so I do believe that a lot of women have opted out. Women classically opt out of their career trajectory, really usually at about the SVP level, when they get to the SVP level, because depending on their age and if they haven't had children, and if they want to have children, that's when that decision has to be made. But we self-select ourselves out to some degree, but also institutionally, there are all those unconscious biases that say, well, is this the right time for them? And so it's a piece from both sides. I'm just talking in generalizations. Of course, not everyone's that way. And lastly, I'll say it's because still to this day, men are promoted on potential and women are promoted on experience. And we have to start promoting on potential and qualities and talent. Skills can be taught. I say you hire a character, you train for whatever skill the person is missing, but what you pay for is the talent that human being possesses, irrespective of gender.
Hey, listeners, you can now join our text-based community in the suite at 201-581-3983. Just text us 201-581-3983 to join. After you do that, we'll be lifting you up, inspiring you, and supercharging your life with awesome quotes, resources, videos, and tips we learn from our great guests. It couldn't be any easier. Just text 201-581-3983 to join. How do we get people who are on the one side of the coin now that are hiring more for the experience side for the women now to hire in potential? How do we cause that groundswell or that shift in consciousness on a part of our leaders? Is it us stepping up to the plate for ourselves? So for the woman that's listening right now, if she knows that she's in contention and it's in those last phases of the interview stage, is there certain narrative does she argue for herself to get the shift in consciousness away from, hey, I'm hiring more from experience? Is she even at this stage right now?
If she's the person interviewing for the position, you mean, or if she's the person who's hiring?
Right. So I'm thinking, here's the situation in my mind, right? I'll kind of script it out. That the CEO who characteristically has looked at female leaders and vetted them through the organization based on experience now has the opportunity that he's got a great female leader in front of him right now. She might not have the experience, but she has everything else checks the box, that potential probability.
There was this particular project. It was a president of wealth management within a very large broker dealer. And we two candidates. There was a female candidate and a male candidate. Both of them were equally talented, both of them equally experienced on the wealth management piece. When I interviewed and debriefed with the woman, she started by telling me all the things that she could have done better, and then she talked about all the things that were great. I asked the guy, the gentleman, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "I nailed it." It's great to be critical thinking. These are one of the skills of the future. Those are that when you hire people without the exact experience, these are the things you look for. What is their critical thinking? What are their analytic? What are they? So it's great that we have them. The shift might be minor, but the rippling effects, like in an ocean, are massive tsunamis. So if you before you walk into that interview, before you talk about yourself, you not only need to see yourself in the room, you not only need to lean in, like Sheryl Sandberg says, you need to put your elbows on the table, and you need to get right in people and say, this is why I'm the right person. And you have to really embody that. And you have to not think about, well, I haven't done that, but I think. No, but. This is what I'm going to do. This is why my fresh perspective is great. This is why the intellectual vitality that I bring to this role and the diversity of thinking is what's right. You talk about the qualities and the skills and the talent that you bring, because that is what we will be recruiting for in the future. When machine learning and automation and AI sucks out a lot of the pieces to the work, the more technologically advanced we become, the more human we must be. And the future is human plus technology. So focus on the human that you are. Focus on the intelligence that you bring. And then once you step into that role, realize that you are going to need the support of the organization around you. And the CEO has to understand this too. And what I mean by that, you have brought different into your world. We as human beings are hardwired to be suspect of different. It's born in our amygdala, right? It's there.
Right,
it's really born. Yes.
Right?
That is the fight or flight, or I don't know you, so I'm going to be cautious. You see it in a baby. You approach and the baby doesn't know you. He backs up and he goes, wait a minute, who are you? Right? So the CEO or that hiring executive has to understand it's not just being nice. It's how do I teach and train my people to say, this person is going to be different. The style, the thinking, their knowledge base is going to be different. Their experience is different. We're not going to focus on the experience. We're going to focus on the thoughts. We're going to focus on the energy, the critical thinking, the innovation, the perspective, and the do. Everybody has to know that there will be a moment of time before all of these people get synced up to a certain degree. And you have to be okay with saying, I'm going to say, wow, oh, she doesn't know that. Okay. Instead of reacting from that place, say, oh, okay, well, let me talk to you about that. And you as the person have to drink in and ask for it. I've never done that. I'm not familiar with that. I'm still learning. Don't go in your room and say, like we super women try to be, right? I'm going to figure it out on myself. I got to show up the next day. It's okay to, it is empowering, it's enriching, it's in the education and the conversation that fertile ideas will grow. But it is both us and the institution.
You've got to do some pre-work, obviously,
Yes.
before that, but it sounds like the pre-work is a little different. Do you also do some of that with your clients? I'm curious to understand, at what point should women, they get a little tap, they get a little feeling in their gut and they're like, it's good here. But when's a good time to get in touch with a recruiter, Cecile? When you're at your wit's end, or when you're like, it's pandemic and I'm seeing the culture for what the culture is. I'm seeing people in a vulnerable state and I don't know that I like it.
That's a really great question. So I would say this. I would say that whenever you get a call from a recruiter, it is a call that you should always return, for the simple reason that knowledge is power. You get to know what's happening in the market. You get to know competitive information from ostensibly your own competitor, right? So if you're happy in your own role, they call you about one of your competitors because theoretically that's why they're calling you, because you would be right for the role. So you as a manager, if you stay, or as a leader, you get to know what's happening, on the other side of the fence. Very positive thing. Number one, you understand market data from a compensation perspective. If you choose not to move forward, you walked away the better for it. If you had a good relationship with that recruiter, you now have someone that could be an advocate for you while you're happily doing what you do. I take the position, my team takes the position of every phone call that I make, and we have literally hundreds of thousands of people in our database over the last 28 years, one call at a time. And we always take the position of saying, Tina, I'm calling to talk to you about this opportunity. I would welcome the opportunity to network with you. I value your thoughts and opinions. Great people know other great people. And then I tell you a little bit about it. And if you have interest, then it's great. But if I function from the position of, I'm going to call Tina today and Tina's going to be the one, listen, I would have retired, 27 years ago, because I would have done, 3,000 searches in 1 month. So that's just not the world. So we build that relationship. We get to know you, you get to know us, but also in that process, whatever process you went through with that recruiter to whatever length, you learn something about yourself. If the recruiter's doing the right things, they would ask you what's important to you, what do you do, what do you like to do, what don't you like to do, how do you think about your career? It's especially in a pandemic when we're doing so much and we have the time to stop and think. That's part of that process should be in thinking about changing careers or changing companies. Right. What do I want to do? It's really good to stop and have that self-reflection moment. And you don't have to act on it, but it allows you that opportunity. I would advise that for me, the what I would call the bad decisions that I made in my life have done under extreme duress or emotional duress. So some of us don't have the opportunity or don't have the good fortune of doing that. You walk in and you're laid off because of a merger or something unforeseen. But if you're feeling this sense that this is not the right alignment for you, don't wait until it's so bad that you can't go to work. Because believe me, if you feel that way, your work productivity, your contribution has started to erode, and you're going to leave a legacy that is not worthy of you, because that's not who you are. You should, again, trust yourself and be kind to yourself and take a proactive measure. And I say that we'd rather recruit people that are not running away from something, but that are running to something. Everybody wins in that scenario, if you have the good fortune of being able to do that.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I like how you just phrased it about always take the call from the recruiter, because you get a piece of business intelligence that you get data that you didn't normally exist. And that data and that knowledge is powerful. And yeah, when you start to leave, and look, it's happened to all of us that, at some point in your career, you try to force it. And then without you even realizing, your own work now that used to be at an A+ level is by definition, you're playing a C- game, because you do not have the total singularity of focus, because again, your stomach's in a knot, you're feeling anxiety, you've got all of these emotions. So if you're not in that awesome emotional state, you can't do great work to begin with.
Correct. And you take that home with you. And if it's COVID, it never leaves you. You bring that energy into your home. And the other part is, think about when we were in college, or think about when we were learning something. How much do you learn when you're sitting thinking, I really hate geology, or geography. I don't know when I'm going to use this. Everything, the kids these days, everything's on Google. You're not absorbing, you're not taking in, and that's not to say that every career at every point is just fun and games and, joy. There are things that we do in every part of our careers that we don't want to do. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I really don't want to be here. You're not giving yourself the opportunity to be the very best that you can be. And you're not giving the company the opportunity to be the very best as a firm that they can be. It's a lose-lose for both parties. And look, I understand sometimes that I have kids, I have responsibilities. This is from a remuneration perspective. I don't want to leave because I don't want to leave without a job. And the industry still does not look favorably upon people who leave without a job. We question them, which is wrong. I get that. That's why I say you should always have a resource. And those resources are recruiters. So many things now are online. You can also very proactively, constantly be following firms that you respect. Find out what you like, what you love, what you're passionate about. When you think about the trajectory of your life experience professionally, not positions, unless you're clear on that, then what you want your professional life experiences to be, start following those. Start reading Harvard Business Review. Start following McKinsey. Start absorbing this information and then think about, how do I put that into practice as I take authorship on my career, right? You are the only author, should be the only author to your life, into the book of your life. A big chunk of that is your professional life.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to fill that with?
And I think also having a strong idea of what you want in your professional life is also to influence by what you're doing in your personal life.
Yes.
And so I think that one of the things that the pandemic made kind of hard, to your point, were the lack of activities, the hobbies, the things that we used to do. I know that you actually competed most recently in the US DC Ballroom Dance Championships.
Yeah.
I watched you, I stalked you admittingly on YouTube. So I definitely know that I did add to the viewer count.
Thank you.
And I think like it's a lesson. It was so fascinating for me to see that side of you, and the reason why I'm bringing it to the surface here is because a lot of women in the industry, Cecile, know you as being the top recruiter now in the financial services for the last 28 years. Again, we see you everywhere. But, tell us about how much of Ballroom has had an effect on your, professional life. As women here who are listening in the suite, I know that getting on my horse yesterday, getting on DJ, helped me work out a pretty stressful week.
Well, it's thank you for that. It has allowed me to lose my ever powerful tool of I'm in control. And number one. Number two, because I do American rhythm and I do the Latin dances. And so I am working down, I do pro-am, which means I'm dancing with a professional. And so the lead, the gentleman in this case, leads, and I have to wait for the information and follow. I have never enjoyed following anybody. I have enjoyed.
You're a fire horse like me.
Yes. My family has a lot of, God bless them, has a lot of nicknames for me. They call me, Hulk, because I believe that where my intelligence can't figure the problem, sheer brute force will, right? And I pound until I get it done. But this is a whole other side. But there's also the truth of it is, I grew up dancing, was a little ballerina, then I stopped for years and years and years because I didn't think that I could allow myself the pleasure of dancing and spending hours doing that while I was building my practice. But the truth of it is, as a Hispanic woman, I spent so much time saying, you will want to deal with me because of my intelligence. You'll enjoy dealing with me because I'm a good and kind and forthright person. And you'll pick up the phone because hopefully I make you laugh and we have fun. And you can always trust me and I will always be there. During the crash of the market in 2008, I took so many calls where people just wanted to be sad and for someone to say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. I will help you, even though of course I couldn't help everybody, but I was there. But I always had to be, because we deal predominantly with men, I had to not be a woman. I could not, I told myself that. And in our generation, Tina, we were told, we tried to dress like men. I wore men's suits for the first 3 years of my professional life, even ties.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's don't see me, but really see me, hear me. But
dark.
Yes.
Our choice of jewelry.
All of it.
Our handbags, briefcases.
All of it. And I had a really bad accident when I turned 50, or a couple of years before, and I had to have surgery and on my leg, on my left leg, and my hip and my thigh. And they said, well, we don't even know if you're going to be able to walk properly. And I remember telling the doctor that I respected his diagnosis, but I rejected his prognosis. And so my then husband, for my 50th birthday, bought me ballroom classes. There's a studio that opened up down the street from my house because I didn't want to drive. It's LA. It takes you an hour and a half to go, 4 miles. Soho Dance LA. So I thought, this is great. So I tried it. And let me tell you, the excruciating pain that I went through and the comments of, Cecile, you're dancing like a boy. I see you. You're not a boy. And why are you pushing me? Relax. Let me lead you. Feel the music. Get out. And it was get out of your head, get out of your head, get out of your head, get out of your head. And that was so hard for me. And of course, now I didn't know then, going through the divorce, going through the pandemic, which I kept dancing, even online. It allows me to feel my body. And when we talk about sinking to that deep place, to finding where we will find our own answers in our life. We distill everything that people tell us, what we read, what we hear that don't even need to hear, but what we hear from people that loves us. I go there. You go there in your horse, right? Because it's something of, I'm really not controlling this, but I have to work in harmony with this. I'm choosing this because this brings me my happy. The same thing with ballroom dancing. There's something about, yes, the feathers, the sequins, the rhinestones, yes. But
my favorite is that dress that with the sequins and then the pink. Yes. And boy, you got some pair of legs too.
Well, listen, those were hard earned. I come home and there's moments when I wake up and I say, dear God, please, just an earthquake so I can fall off of the bed and then be able to crawl to the shower and get up. But it's that, there's 7 different kinds of rest that human beings need: sleep, mental rest, emotional rest, spiritual rest, creative rest. And I dance because I tire myself out physically and emotionally and spiritually. So then when I sleep so profoundly that I rest, and I can now bring creativity and almost a lightness to my professional work. And as an entrepreneur, we have to walk ourselves off that ledge every month, right?
Thank you very much for saying that. Right. It's not a cup of tea. It's yeah, exactly. But whether or not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur.
No.
And it's okay to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to be an intrapreneur. It's okay to be an employee. I think that women go through different stages of their life, but it really is getting in touch with yourself and what's making you happy, and really sitting in a place of darkness and really understanding and getting to know yourself. I would encourage every single woman, especially in their mid to senior level career, to try to get some sort of a outlet.
Yes.
Ballroom dancing, cooking. I did quilting at one point, jewelry making at another point. Experiment with everything. Try everything. It's so fun. It kind of reminds me of high school, Cecile, that I use Orange Theory now as my high school gym class. Like every day you had gym at this point, right? And I'm like, wow, like there's no reason that we can't engineer some of the things from our earlier lives that help to just give us, put us on solid footing.
Part of the challenge of being a woman-owned business in this space, for me, the limitations I placed in my mind was, okay, I have to be more male-like, which was wrong, or number one. And number two, we always have to balance our emotions. So it's true. I believe it. We cannot allow, an advice that I would give women, I give women very often, is we are very emotional beings, and that's a good thing. That's how it allows us to connect empathetically with people. But we have to then bring our emotional intelligence to a level so that we don't allow our emotions to overpower our intellect, which is equally as great. What ballroom dancing or doing something for which I am passionate in a completely different level, but I have to also use my intellect to understand movement and all the million and one things. We say that in ballroom dancing, your whole body is invited to the party, even your hair. So what it allows me to do is allows me to really unleash just the pure emotion of things. And we have to do that. And in life, I believe we have one purpose, but we can have many passions. And as we grow in our life and we experience different things, we should experience different things that bring up different passion levels and enjoyment levels. This makes us better people, and we must bring our whole selves to the professional life. That's what makes us great. That's what makes us different than men. That's diversity. That's diversity in gender and diversity in thinking.
So beautifully said, Cecile. I know that we're going to have a lot of great takeaways from today's broadcast. I know that there are women and men listening right now here in the suite who want to make sure that they have a conversation with you, be able to get in touch with you. What would be the best way for them to do that?
So you can always reach me at my office, and my website is usexecutivesearch.com. My email is my initial and my last name, C Munoz, CMUNOZ at usexecutivesearch.com. Or you can also ping us through our podcast at endswithz.com.
And do you also encourage people, because you're a recruiter, and is it okay for people to reach out and send you a LinkedIn connection?
Absolutely. Yes, LinkedIn is always great. I get a lot of LinkedIn requests, so that takes me a little bit longer to get. I am old school. I love the human connection. I love getting emails from people. I love getting phone calls from people, and you'll see all that on my website. My team is extraordinarily efficient that within 24, maximum 48 hours, somebody will respond. I built this practice one phone call at a time. I have the knowledge that I have because it has been at the privilege of people like you and others in the industry, some of them who have now CEO spots and some of them who've retired and some of them who sit at PE firms, because we had conversations. We didn't just have a LinkedIn message. We had conversations. Right. We connected on a human-to-human basis. That's what I love to do. And listen, I wish there were 36 hours and instead of 24 in a day. That would have been better, but I will get to every single call. I promise you. That's what I love. That's what human nature is my passion, but human capital is my business. I love the work that we do.
Well, God bless the work that you're doing, because it's helped so many careers of people here in the industry. And then also just following your own career, it's been refreshing. We're definitely seeing more female leaders in media, right? And we've even too, I would say the amount of publications and even media entities and media properties and financial services have also too exponentially increased in the last 5 years, especially too. But you were always a constant for me. So one of the last questions that we're asking is a book recommendation. And is there anything that you think that we should be reading in 2021? Anything that has your eye that would be useful for us as a takeaway?
Yes, I will give you two, actually. I am a voracious reader.
I figured that.
I will give you two. And one of the best things that I did is I've been part of 2 book clubs. One is just free, fun, and one is professional book club with people in different industries, so I can gain from their perspective of what they read that they feel is meaningful. Because I like to skate where I think the puck is going, like Gretzky said, and I can only know that from other people, not just from my own thoughts. So on the professional side, I would recommend Angela Duckworth's Grit.
Yep.
Phenomenal. Parents should read it. Professionals should read it. College students should read it. High school students should read it. Executives should read it. It is, first of all, it is a very brilliantly written book, but it is a book that will center you as to how do I become, the steward of my own ship, and what will allow me to propel in life. She is just brilliant as a human being. And she brings a lot of her honest self into the book, which I respect. The other I received as a gift for Christmas from a friend who is like my sister, who also I have the privilege of calling her my teammate. She's with my firm, and it's Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Okay.
She is a phenomenal woman writer. It is her perspective, which is brilliant, on what has locked women up and how you unlock these conversations, these limitations about yourself. When I first read it, I thought, oh gosh, I'm becoming that friend that is sad, that is going through a divorce. God help me, I'm not that person. But as I started reading it, I was thinking, this woman is brilliant. She's going to places that we women are told you shouldn't go there. You shouldn't think about those things. I highly recommended it. I just finished it. And I think Glennon is actually somebody I would love to have on my podcast. She would be brilliant on any podcast. Brilliant writer, prolific author. But this one is just about how we go back to being untamed, go back to these, when we were 8, 9 years old, when our hair was flying, we thought everything was possible. We were not self-aware. We didn't know what the difference between being the pretty girl, between being the smart girl. We just wanted to be everything.
I have a 5-hour drive to Boston next week. And I just finished Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. That was really fantastic. You being here in the suite means so much to me today, definitely to the women who are listening. And, my goal has been to help to make an impact by bringing the women here in the industry who have done amazing work. And yes, you have a podcast of your own. And a lot of times you're not necessarily talking about your own career. So thank you so much, Cecile Munoz. You're listening to In the Suite, a podcast that shares amazing stories of women in business, in the financial services, and the wealth management industry. Our producers are Tina Powell and Kevin Hirshorn. Our editor-at-large is Kevin Hirshorn. Our content writers are Dimple Rashanjani, Carmen Varner, Sarah Smirker, and Tina Powell. Our research and technical assistants are Sarah Smirker and Rachel Powell. In the Suite podcast is sponsored by C-Suite Social Media, a digital marketing and social media agency for C-Suite leaders and companies in finance and technology. You can visit csuitesocialmedia.com to learn more. And thank you so much for listening and subscribing and giving us 5-star reviews. We are so grateful to you. We've got listeners in 640 cities and 40 countries. Thank you, US, France, Japan, Spain, Singapore, Indonesia, UK. This podcast was inspired by you and created for you, ladies. So please let us know how you enjoyed this episode with Cecile Munoz and share your thoughts on LinkedIn and Twitter, #InTheSuite. You can connect with Cecile on LinkedIn and visit her website, www.usexecutivesearch.com, to learn more. As always, if you would like to share the name of a rockstar woman in financial services you think we should interview in 2021, please send it to me and I'll consider it at tina@inthesuitepodcast.com. I thank you so much for listening and subscribing to In the Suite.